we're both part of the same Latino community. You're not saying that all 350,000 people were gang members, are you?
Of course not. The majority
Are
are
you
not,
saying
but
that
if
they
1,000
were-
of them are, we got a big problem.
Well,
Unfortunately, that blanket approval of TPS gave TPS, including to people that frankly we should not have allowed in this country, irrespective of what part of the world they came from. I think that problematic is that when you do a blanket TPS, number one, it's supposed to be temporary. None of these TPSs ever go away. But number two, when you do a blanket, especially in a mass migration event, it is going to protect and cover people that frankly we should not have allowed into this country.
You guys seeing this? Did you catch that look on Castro's face? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are diving into a heated exchange that really highlights the tension in Washington right now. We just saw a small part of it, but what Representative Joaquin Castro tried to do here is something you see a lot in politics. He attempts to frame a serious policy issue through emotional examples. He even tries to corner Senator Marco Rubio by asking whether 350,000 people are gang members, a clear gotcha question designed to force a difficult answer. But Rubio doesn't flinch. He responds by shifting the conversation back to broader concerns about security and policy. We're going to watch the full exchange now, but pay attention to how Castro sets the tone before pressing his argument. Let's watch.
thank you, Secretary. Thank you for your testimony. I want to say at the beginning that I think that in terms of roles in the cabinet, that coming into your job, I think you're the most qualified cabinet member. In a cabinet that I think has otherwise been incompetent and unqualified. You and I are obviously of different political parties, but we share kind of a similar story. My grandmother, Victoria Castro, came to this country when she was 6 or 7 years old as an orphan because both her parents had died after the Mexican Revolution, and the closest relatives that could take her in were not in Mexico. They were in San Antonio. And when my grandmother came to Eagle Pass, Texas, the manifest that allowed her to come, there was a question that was asked on that document. And the question said, purpose for visit. And her relatives that were bringing her, they wrote in to live, that she was coming to live. You have an incredible family story of your parents and your grandfather coming from Cuba in the 1950s and maybe early 1960s, and a similar background of helping you and your siblings pursue their American dreams, just like my grandmother did for my mom and for us. But I feel like today, under the Trump administration, our grandparents may have ended up in a gulag or banished in Guantanamo, or like the girl that I visited with who was a US citizen in Mexico a few weeks ago with a brain tumor, having her seizure medication seized at a CBP inland port. And her mom, who's undocumented Mexican, her caretaker, 24 hours a day, not allowed to come back with her to get cancer, to get treatment for her condition. And I want to ask you specifically about a policy decision where on February 5th, DHS Secretary Noem rescinded temporary protected status for Venezuelans. This same thing was used for 700,000 Cubans in the 1960s and 70s. And she stated that in consultation with the Department of State, assessed conditions in Venezuela and that there are, quote, notable improvements in several areas such as the economy, public health, and crime that allow for these nationals to be safely returned to their home countries. And you said as recently as a few years ago that returning and failing to renew TPS for Venezuelans would be, quote, very real death sentence for countless Venezuelans who have fled their country. That was a few years ago. And so I wanted to ask you, do you believe after everything that Maduro has done, and you and I have both condemned him, as I think almost everybody on this dais has, that TPS recipients forced to return to Venezuela will truly be safe in that country? And how do you justify the decision to send 350,000 people to Venezuela right now?
Well, 350,000 people have not been sent to Venezuela. I think you're referring to the TPS cancellation of the temporary status. So 2 points. Number one is, unfortunately, that blanket approval of TPS gave TPS, including to people that frankly we should not have allowed in this country, irrespective of what part of the world they came from. Number two is the hope that now people that have received TPS will apply through the asylum process. And I believe many of them, if not most of them, will have very credible asylum claims to make for the reason you've just outlined. I think that problematic is that when you do a blanket TPS, number one, it's supposed to be temporary. None of these TPSs ever go away. But number two, when you do a blanket, especially in a mass migration event, it is going to protect and cover people that frankly we should not have allowed into this country. The overwhelming
I guess, look, I mean, we're both part of the same Latino community. You're not saying that all 350,000 people were gang members, are you?
Of course not. The majority
Are
are
you
not.
saying
But
that
if
they were-
1,000 of them are, we got a big problem.
Well, yeah, but so because there is a very small group who are criminals, just like any group of Americans, you're saying that none of them get any due process? They're just automatically expelled?
No,
like
they
no
have a right
review,
to-
no nothing for any of their cases?
Well, again, it's not my department. We don't do asylum claims, but I
Well,
can
but
tell
she
you they
said
can
she
apply for
consulted
asylum.
with you. She said that it was her decision and your decision, and a few years ago you said it was a death sentence.
Yeah, but the problem is the previous administration did a terrible job of vetting applicants for TPS. They just blanket approved it.
They
So
did
now-
things that have been done in other administrations before.
But never in this
Republican and
mass migration
Democrat.
event. Hey, look, the bottom line is, of course, the overwhelming majority of them are not gang members, and they will be able to apply for asylum, and they have a very credible claim.
I have
but
to
there
yield.
are some that are, and
I
they
have
need
to
to be
yield my
removed from our
remaining
country.
time.
Unreal. Did you catch the beginning of that? Castro starts off by praising Rubio, calling him highly qualified. It's a classic rhetorical move, soften the tone before introducing a sharp critique. Then he pivots, bringing up personal and emotional stories, including references to family and individual hardship. This is often used to humanize policy debates, especially on immigration. Castro's argument leans heavily on compassion and the real-life impact of decisions. At one point, he raises a deeply emotional case involving a sick child. These kinds of examples are powerful, but they also shift the focus from broad policy to individual circumstances. Critics of this approach argue that isolated cases shouldn't determine nationwide policy. Rubio, on the other hand, keeps returning to a different point: the importance of vetting and national security. He emphasizes that even a small number of dangerous individuals within a larger group could pose serious risks. This highlights a fundamental divide. One side argues from humanitarian urgency, protect people first. The other argues from systemic caution, verify first, then decide case by case. Castro also references past statements to challenge Rubio's consistency, another common tactic in hearings. Rubio responds by staying focused on his broader argument rather than getting pulled into side debates. By the end of the exchange, you can see the contrast clearly. Castro centers his argument on compassion and individual stories. Rubio centers his on process, security, and long-term policy implications. So what do you think? Is Castro right to use human stories to push for broader protections? Or do you agree more with Rubio's emphasis on systems and vetting first? Drop a comment below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll keep breaking down these moments so you can see exactly what's happening behind the headlines.